The film in which you are about to see is an account of the tragedy in which befell 5 Finnish friends. In February of 2014, 5 friends including Patrick Gronquist, Visa Rantanen, Kai Kenkinen, Jari Huitarinen, and Jari Uzumaki were all heading to Plura Lake located here in Rana, Norway. Underneath the lake is a cave system that runs from here and runs all the way to a drive cave system located here. The 5 divers were planning on being a handful of men to actually traverse the entire cave. Though for Gronquist this would be his second time traversing the cave, in itself is a huge accomplishment. The lake had frozen over that morning, so they had to use a chainsaw to cut into the ice. Gronquist and Huitarinen were the first 2 men up of the 5 to explore the cave. The total time underwater from beginning to end was only supposed to be for 5 hours in total. The 2 men would then descend about 65 feet or a little under 20 meters into the cave system. About an hour had gone by since they had first started their voyage, and they were about to come up on the U-bend at the halfway point of the cave, located right here. As they were rounding the bend and starting their ascent back up to the top, Huitarinen would become entangled in the guideline and begin to panic. Gronquist noticed this immediately and began to swim back to help his friend out. While anyone can tell you that panicking while cave diving is very common, panicking while cave diving can also be a very common killer in the sport, as panicking increases your rate of breathing and makes you consume your breathing gas much more quickly than usual. However, due to the depth of the dive, the men were not wearing your typical open breathing system that would normally expel all the previously breathed in gas, but rather a closed system where all the carbon dioxide is filtered out and then the breathing gas is then reused for the rest of the trip. However, when breathing at too high a rate, the carbon dioxide will not be able to filter out fast enough, resulting in the diver experiencing a suffocating feeling as the carbon dioxide concentration rises in the blood system. Gronquist turned around immediately with his spare gas cylinder and regulator in hand. As Huitarinen began to switch between regulators, he was still in a panic and started to breathe in water at the same time. Due to the high concentration of carbon dioxide in his blood system already, Gronquist could only watch in horror as his friend would eventually drown and die right in front of his eyes. Gronquist would then stay for another 20 minutes to try to unfreeze the body, but to no avail. Gronquist then realized that he would have to leave his friend's body behind and finish the rest of the journey on his own, as staying at those depths for past 20 minutes would now make his decompression stops prolonged on the way back up to the top. It was also at this time that he realized that the other 3 divers were still planning on making their way through the cave and would eventually stumble upon his friend's body. Not only would this be a horrible sight to see, but his body would now also be blocking the path of the other 3 divers, making their pathway much more dangerous and their likelihood of dying now tenfold. And unfortunately, Gronquist had no way of letting the other 3 divers know of the new situation at hand. About an hour had passed when the other 3 divers, Rantanen, Kenkinen, and Uzumaki had started their descent into the cave. Rantanen would be the man leading the pack of the 3 new divers. Unfortunately for Rantanen, that would also mean that he would be the first one to see his friend's dead body. He would later recall the eerie silence of the cave being pierced with a loud beeping sound. As the men rounded the U-shaped bend, their worst fears were confirmed as the beeping was coming from Huitarinen's emergency pack, and Huitarinen's body was also now blocking the very narrow passageway. Rantanen then by himself decided that turning around and going back would be too dangerous and long, so he decided to squeeze past his dead friend for a safer passage through the cave. Jari Uzumaki was a man coming right up behind Rantanen, but upon the sight of his dead friend, began to panic and turn around, and at a depth of about 134 meters or 442 feet, became stuck. Kenkinen was the last man in the cave and also one of the more experienced divers of the group. Along with Gronquist, he also previously traversed the cave and now was making another go at it. Noticing that Uzumaki was now also stuck and in trouble, tried to help his friend, but to also no avail. Just as quickly as Huitarinen, Uzumaki would also drown, at the bottom of the cave. Unfortunately, now with two bodies in the way, Kekkonen would now have to turn around and go back the way he came. After about 11 hours of being submerged in the cave and having to do his decompression stops on the way out of the cave, he broke through a thin sheet of ice that had formed across the lake and was finally able to resurface from the cave safely. After completing all of their decompression stops, Gronquist and Rontanen were also able to resurface at the dry cave at Steinnugleflaglet, pictured right here. After spending such time at such a great depth, and also having to speed through all of their decompression stops, each of the 3 surviving men would suffer through what is known as the bends, or decompression sickness. The local police were then notified, and the cave was then shut down to the public. An international diving team was then assembled to try and rescue the bodies. The international diving team would begin their descent from the dry cave located here. The diving team would come across the body of Huatarinen first and try to get it unstuck, but again, to no avail. The divers then determined that because of the depth and the tight squeezes that the bodies were in, that the rescue was deemed too dangerous to continue and called off. After hearing this, Gronquist, Rontanen, and Kekkonen and the local diving community were all distraught at the thought of leaving their friends at the bottom of this immensely deep cave. So they all agreed to embark on an illegal diving rescue mission to rescue their friends' dead bodies. The 2-day journey would begin with the men bringing their equipment to both sides of the cave system. All 3 of the original divers were present for the rescue mission, although after a wrong turn taken by Gronquist, Kekkonen decided to go ahead and turn back as he felt uneasy about the situation, so he decided to continue helping out at the surface. It was also decided that Rontanen would be the surface manager as he suffered a spinal injury from the decompression sickness from the other dive. Also, during the rescue mission, one of the divers, Sami Pakarinen, was nearly crushed to death by a collapsing part of the cave. Luckily though, he was able to escape the situation, and overall the rescue mission to save their friends' bodies was a success, and surprisingly the men were not charged with illegal diving. Patrick Gronquist was even nominated by his co-workers at the firehouse for the first-class medal of the White Rose of Finland for his heroism. The cave was then reopened in 2019. A couple would even set the Guinness World Record for the biggest wedding with 66 people in a flooded cave. Although, as a grim reminder, just over 100 meters under them still remains some of the gear of Jari Uzumaki and Jari Huatarinen for anyone brave enough to dive into its frigidest depths. If you would like to know more about the rescue mission, there is a documentary out now called Diving into the Unknown, starring all of the original diving crew as themselves. Let this be a lesson that if you're going to do the most dangerous sport in the world, that you stay calm and collected throughout. Remember to hit the subscribe button and notification bell for more content in the future. Goodbye for now.